What if I told you that the person you think you are, the conscious you that's listening right now, is merely the tip of an enormous psychological iceberg? That beneath your everyday awareness lies a vast, mysterious realm filled with hidden memories, repressed desires, ancient wisdom, and untapped potential? Imagine for a moment what it would mean if you could access this hidden part of yourself. What might you discover? What abilities might you unlock? What insights about your life's purpose might finally become clear? Carl Jung, one of history's most revolutionary psychologists, dedicated his life to mapping this invisible territory, what he called the unconscious mind. And what he discovered was nothing short of extraordinary. Unlike his mentor Freud, who saw the unconscious primarily as a repository for repressed urges, Jung found it to be an incredibly rich creative source of wisdom and guidance, if only we could learn its unique language. By the end of our journey today, you'll understand why your dreams hold keys to parts of yourself you've never met. You'll discover practical methods to interpret the symbolic messages your unconscious sends every night. And most importantly, you'll learn how this deeper connection with your whole self can transform your waking life in profound ways. I've spent years studying Jung's methods, applying them in my own life, and witnessing the remarkable transformations they've created. Today, I'll share the essence of what I've learned, and you'll never look at your mind or your dreams the same way again. Section 1. The structure of the mind according to Jung. When Jung looked at the human mind, he saw something far more complex and fascinating than the mechanical models popular in his day. He envisioned our psyche as a dynamic, living system, constantly balancing forces between what we're aware of and what remains hidden from view. To truly understand Jung's approach to the unconscious, we first need to grasp his revolutionary model of the mind. Unlike many before him, Jung saw consciousness and unconsciousness not as opposing forces but as two sides of the same psychological reality, complementary rather than contradictory. Number 1. The conscious mind. What you're experiencing right now as you listen to my words. This is the realm of your aware thoughts, perceptions, feelings, and identity. It's where your sense of I resides. Jung believed that consciousness evolved relatively recently in human history and represents only a small fraction of our total mental activity. At the center of consciousness stands the ego, what you typically think of as yourself. The ego serves as the gatekeeper between conscious and unconscious realms, organizing your experiences into a coherent sense of identity and continuity. But Jung recognized its limitations. The ego, focused on adaptation to external reality, often filters out crucial information from the deeper mind that doesn't fit its current understanding. Think about how your conscious awareness works like a spotlight moving across a dark stage. It illuminates only small portions of your total psychological experience at any moment, leaving the vast majority in darkness. This selectivity creates a natural imbalance that your unconscious continually works to correct. Number 2. Beneath everyday awareness lies what Jung called the personal unconscious. This is your own private psychological basement, filled with everything you've forgotten, repressed, or never fully processed. It contains experiences too painful to face, memories that have faded from conscious recall, perceptions too subtle to register fully, and aspects of your personality that haven't been allowed expression. The personal unconscious is also home to what Jung called complexes, emotionally charged clusters of ideas and memories that can hijack your behavior when triggered. Ever had an emotional reaction completely out of proportion to what was happening? That's often a complex at work. Number 3, and perhaps most revolutionary in Jung's model, is the collective unconscious, a deeper layer shared by all humanity. This profound dimension contains what Jung called archetypes, universal patterns and predispositions that shape human experience across cultures and time periods. The collective unconscious isn't filled with specific memories or ideas, but with inherited forms, psychological instincts, if you will, that predispose us to experience life in particular patterns. These aren't learned. They're innate, structural elements of the psyche that influence how we perceive and respond to life. What fascinates me is that these 3 levels aren't separate compartments, but fluid, interacting dimensions of a single unified psyche. They're constantly communicating, compensating for imbalances, and seeking greater wholeness and integration. And here's what most people never realize about their minds. What you know about yourself, your conscious identity, is merely the surface layer of who you truly are. The most powerful aspects of your personality, your deepest motivations, and your greatest untapped potential all reside in those deeper unconscious layers. As we continue our exploration, remember this fundamental insight of Jung's work. Consciousness and the unconscious exist in a compensatory relationship. When your conscious attitude becomes too one-sided or limited, the unconscious automatically generates dreams, fantasies, and impulses designed to restore psychological balance. This dynamic relationship helps explain why paying attention to unconscious material, particularly dreams, is so vital for psychological health and growth. It's not just interesting, it's essential for becoming your complete self. Section 2. The Personal Unconscious, your hidden storehouse of experience. Let's dive deeper into the personal unconscious, that private reservoir of forgotten memories, repressed experiences, and undeveloped aspects of yourself that lies just beneath your everyday awareness. The personal unconscious forms a kind of middle layer in Jung's model, less immediately accessible than conscious thoughts, but more readily available than the deeper collective unconscious. It's uniquely yours, shaped by your individual life experiences rather than shared evolutionary patterns. Where does this personal unconscious come from? Jung identified several sources. First are experiences that were once conscious, but have been forgotten or actively repressed. These might include childhood memories that have faded with time, painful experiences you've pushed away, or simply the countless minor perceptions that pass through your awareness without being stored in long-term memory. Second are subliminal perceptions, things you've sensed below the threshold of awareness. Your mind registers far more information than you consciously process. Right now, as you listen to my words, your senses are taking in countless details about your surroundings that never reach conscious awareness, but are still registered in your personal unconscious. Third are aspects of your personality that remain undeveloped or unexpressed. Perhaps you've focused on developing logical thinking at the expense of emotional sensitivity, or you've cultivated a people-pleasing persona while suppressing your more assertive qualities. Those unlived parts of yourself don't simply disappear. They retreat into the personal unconscious. At the heart of the personal unconscious lie what Jung called complexes, constellations of emotionally charged thoughts, memories, and associations clustered around a common theme. A complex forms when powerful experiences, especially those with strong emotional impact, create a kind of psychological knot in your unconscious mind. Think of complexes as semi-autonomous psychological entities with their own energy and influence. When activated by some trigger in your environment, a complex can temporarily take over, causing you to react in ways that seem out of character or disproportionate to the situation. Have you ever found yourself overreacting to a seemingly minor comment or situation? Perhaps becoming irrationally angry when someone offers a small criticism, or feeling inexplicably anxious in certain social situations despite knowing logically there's nothing to fear. These are classic signs of a complex being triggered. The fascinating thing about complexes is that while they're formed through personal experience, they typically organize themselves around universal archetypal patterns from the deeper collective unconscious. A father complex, for instance, might be shaped by your unique relationship with your father, but will activate around the universal father archetype shared across cultures. Jung discovered that complexes reveal themselves in various ways. They appear in dreams as recurrent figures or situations. They manifest in Freudian slips and other behavioral anomalies. They can be detected through word association tests, where a telling hesitation or unusual response to certain trigger words reveals an underlying complex. But perhaps the most important thing to understand about the personal unconscious is that despite containing difficult or painful material, it's not your enemy. In fact, it holds tremendous resources for growth and healing. By bringing unconscious content into awareness, through dream work, therapy, active imagination, or other methods, you can integrate these fragmented aspects of yourself and release the psychological energy that's been bound up in maintaining repression. Have you ever noticed how an insight about yourself, one of those aha moments where something suddenly becomes clear, can feel tremendously liberating? That's the energy release that comes from making unconscious content conscious. I'd love to hear your experiences with this. Have you ever had a moment where you suddenly understood the reason behind a pattern of behavior or an emotional reaction that had previously seemed inexplicable? Share your story in the comments below. Your insight might help others recognize similar patterns in themselves. As we continue exploring Jung's map of the mind, remember that the personal unconscious is constantly communicating with both your conscious mind and the deeper collective unconscious. Dreams provide one of the most direct channels for this communication, which is why we'll be exploring them in detail as we proceed. Section 3. The Collective Unconscious, Humanity's Shared Psychological Heritage. Now we arrive at Jung's most profound and controversial discovery, the collective unconscious. This is the deepest layer of the psyche, containing not personal experiences but what Jung called the whole spiritual heritage of mankind's evolution, born anew in the brain structure of every individual. Imagine for a moment the implications of Jung's discovery. He found compelling evidence that, beyond your personal memories and experiences, lies a vast reservoir of psychological patterns shared by all humanity, patterns that shape how you perceive reality, influence your emotional reactions, and even drive your sense of meaning and purpose. The collective unconscious isn't a mystical concept, though it's often misunderstood that way. Jung considered it a natural biological phenomenon, the psychological equivalent of our shared physical inheritance. Just as your body's structure reflects evolutionary development spanning millions of years, your psyche contains mental patterns that developed throughout human evolution. What evidence led Jung to this remarkable conclusion? First was the appearance of identical symbolic motifs in dreams, mythology, and religious systems across cultures that had no contact with each other. From Native American tribes to ancient Egyptians to isolated Pacific Islanders, Jung found the same fundamental symbolic patterns expressing universal human experiences. Second was his work with psychotic patients, whose delusions often contained imagery and themes virtually identical to ancient mythological and religious symbols they could not possibly have encountered through cultural transmission. These weren't random hallucinations, but organized patterns emerging from the deepest levels of the psyche. Third was his observation of children, who spontaneously produce universal symbolic imagery in their play and fantasies without being taught these patterns. A child who has never seen a mandala might naturally create circular designs representing wholeness during play, suggesting an innate tendency towards certain symbolic expressions. The primary contents of the collective unconscious are what Jung called archetypes, universal templates that organize experience and give it meaning. These aren't learned. They're inherent structural elements of the psyche that predispose us to perceive and respond to life in particular patterns. Important to understand is that archetypes themselves are not directly knowable. They're forms without specific content, like empty vessels waiting to be filled with the particulars of individual and cultural experience. What we experience are archetypal images and ideas, the specific forms that these universal patterns take in consciousness. The mother archetype, for instance, exists as a universal pattern in the collective unconscious. But how this archetype manifests depends on cultural and personal factors, ranging from the nurturing Earth Mother to the terrible devouring Mother, from the Virgin Mary to Kaylee. Jung identified numerous archetypes, including the shadow, representing rejected aspects of ourselves, the anima, animus, the contrasexual element in each person, the wise old man, woman, the trickster, the child, and perhaps most importantly, the self, representing wholeness and the integration of all aspects of personality. These archetypal patterns emerge most clearly in dreams, fantasies, myths, religious experience, and art, whenever consciousness relaxes its control and allows deeper content to emerge. They often appear at critical junctures in life, providing guidance during times of transition or crisis. Why does the collective unconscious matter for your personal journey? Because these universal patterns don't just influence behavior from afar, they actively shape your perceptions, reactions, and deepest sense of meaning. When you fall in love at first sight, pursue a calling despite practical obstacles, or feel inexplicably drawn to certain symbols or ideas, archetypal forces are often at work. Moreover, the collective unconscious represents a profound connectedness among all humans. Despite our apparent differences, at this deep psychological level, we share fundamental patterns of experience. As Jung himself wrote, the collective unconscious is common to all. It is the foundation of what the ancients called the sympathy of all things. As we continue on our journey, you'll notice how these archetypal patterns show up again and again, in dreams, in symbols, in the process of psychological development Jung called individuation. They aren't abstract concepts, but living psychological realities that influence your life, whether you're aware of them or not. The remarkable discovery Jung made is that the collective unconscious speaks to us constantly, primarily through the symbolic language of dreams. And this leads us naturally to our next topic: how dreams serve as the royal road to the unconscious mind. Section 4. Dreams, the royal road to the unconscious. Every night as you drift into sleep, something remarkable happens. Your conscious mind steps back, and another part of your psyche comes forward to create vivid experiences we call dreams. Far from being random neural firings or meaningless fantasies, Jung discovered that dreams are purposeful communications from the unconscious, precisely calibrated messages designed to balance and complete your conscious perspective. Dreams represent one of the most direct and unfiltered channels through which the unconscious communicates with consciousness. As Jung wrote, "The dream is a little hidden door in the innermost and most secret recesses of the soul. Through this door flows material from both the personal and collective unconscious, offering insights unavailable to the rational mind alone." Jung's understanding of dreams differed dramatically from Freud's. While Freud saw dreams primarily as disguised expressions of repressed wishes, Jung recognized dreams as natural expressions of the unconscious that reveal rather than conceal. Dreams don't speak in code to trick the censor. They speak in symbols because symbols can convey complex, multidimensional meanings that literal language cannot. The most important function of dreams, according to Jung, is compensation. When your conscious attitude becomes too one-sided or limited, your dreams generate imagery and scenarios that present the neglected perspective. If you're being excessively rational in waking life, your dreams might flood you with emotion. If you're ignoring an important decision, your dreams might present scenarios forcing you to confront it. This compensatory function serves your psychological health, maintaining balance within the psyche. Dreams aren't random. They're precision instruments working to correct psychological imbalances and guide you toward greater wholeness. Dreams serve multiple additional functions as well. They process unresolved emotional material, helping integrate experiences that weren't fully assimilated during waking hours. They provide guidance for your individuation process, offering wisdom about your life path, and they connect you to collective wisdom through archetypal imagery that transcends personal experience. What makes dreams particularly valuable is that they bypass your conscious defenses and preconceptions. They show you what you need to see, not what you want to see or already believe. They provide a perspective uncontaminated by ego concerns about social approval or maintaining self-image. Have you ever had a dream that completely changed your perspective on a situation, perhaps revealing feelings you hadn't acknowledged or showing a creative solution to a problem that had eluded your conscious mind? These moments reveal the transformative potential of dream wisdom. What happens when we ignore our dreams? Jung observed that unattended dream content doesn't simply disappear. It accumulates in the unconscious, eventually forcing its way into consciousness through symptoms, emotional disturbances, or even physical illness. Many psychological problems, he believed, arise from a breakdown in communication between conscious and unconscious. Interestingly, modern sleep science has confirmed many aspects of Jung's theory. We now know that REM sleep, when most dreaming occurs, is essential for emotional processing and memory consolidation. Disrupted REM sleep leads to irritability, difficulty concentrating, and impaired learning, suggesting that dream activity serves vital psychological functions. Perhaps the most profound aspect of dreams is their personal meaning. While certain symbols may have universal resonances, the specific significance of your dreams can only be determined in the context of your unique life situation. Your unconscious crafts dreams specifically for you, using imagery and associations that will resonate with your particular psyche. This is why dream dictionaries, which assign fixed meanings to symbols, are fundamentally misguided. A snake in a dream might represent transformation for one person, sexual fears for another, and healing for a third, depending on their personal associations and life circumstances. As we continue our exploration, you'll learn specific methods for working with your dreams, how to remember them, record them, and interpret their symbolic messages. But for now, simply recognize that each night, your unconscious is sending you precisely calibrated wisdom through your dreams. Learning to receive and understand these messages is one of the most valuable skills you can develop for psychological growth. What if tonight, As you prepare for sleep, you set the intention to remember your dreams. What messages might your unconscious have been trying to send that you've been missing? The simple act of paying attention often increases dream recall dramatically. Your unconscious responds to your interest. When you show that you're listening, it speaks more clearly. Section 5. The language of symbols in dreams. To understand your dreams, you must first understand their language, the language of symbols. Unlike our everyday rational thinking, which uses words to convey specific, limited meanings, the unconscious expresses itself through symbols that can simultaneously convey multiple layers of significance. Jung made a crucial distinction between signs and symbols. A sign points to something known, like a road sign indicating a curve ahead. A sign has a fixed, agreed-upon meaning. A symbol, on the other hand, points to something partly unknown that cannot be conveyed any other way. Symbols express realities that words cannot fully capture: the ineffable, the transcendent, the deeply emotional, the genuinely new. This is why dreams speak in symbols rather than literal statements. Your unconscious isn't being deliberately obscure. It's communicating complex, multi-dimensional realities that cannot be adequately expressed in conceptual language. As Jung wrote, a symbol is the best possible expression for something that cannot be expressed otherwise. Symbols emerge when the psyche attempts to express concepts too profound or complex for rational thought alone. They act as transformers of psychic energy, channeling it toward new psychological development. This is why genuine symbols have a numinous, emotionally charged quality. They connect conscious experience with the energy of the unconscious. The symbols in your dreams arise from two primary sources: your personal experiences and the collective unconscious. Personal symbols derive meaning from your unique life history. A childhood home might symbolize security or confinement based on your actual experiences there. Collective symbols tap into universal human patterns, like water representing the unconscious or a journey symbolizing psychological development. One of the most important things to understand about dream symbols is their compensatory nature. They often represent aspects of yourself or your situation that your conscious mind is neglecting or undervaluing. The frightening figure in your dream may represent a disowned strength you need to reclaim, not simply a fear to overcome. The decrepit house might reflect not just decay, but the need for renovation and renewal. Dreams use symbols in ways that can seem bizarre or illogical to the conscious mind because they follow what Jung called dream logic, associations based on emotional resonance rather than rational causality. A dream might juxtapose seemingly unrelated elements because they share an emotional quality invisible to conscious awareness. Key symbolic patterns appear consistently in dreams across cultures. Number 1. Water typically symbolizes the unconscious itself, from shallow pools representing surface awareness to vast oceans representing the collective unconscious. The state of the water, clear, murky, calm, turbulent, often reflects your relationship with unconscious content. Number 2. Houses frequently represent the psyche, with different rooms corresponding to different aspects of your personality. Discovering new rooms often symbolizes becoming aware of previously unknown aspects of yourself. Number 3. Vehicles generally represent how you're moving through life, with different types of transportation suggesting different modes of progression. A car you're driving might represent conscious direction of your life, while a train might suggest you're on a predetermined track. Number 4. People in dreams often represent aspects of yourself rather than actual individuals. Even when you dream of someone you know, they may be appearing as a symbol for a quality they embody that exists within you. Number 5. Animals typically symbolize instinctual or natural energies, aspects of yourself less shaped by cultural conditioning. The specific qualities of the animal suggest what instinctual energy is being represented. What fascinates me about dream symbols is their precision. Your unconscious doesn't randomly generate imagery. It selects specific symbols calibrated to communicate exactly what your conscious mind needs to understand at this moment in your development. The symbols in last night's dream were chosen precisely for you, based on what would resonate with your unique psyche. This is why interpreting dream symbols requires understanding your personal associations with the imagery. While certain symbols may have universal resonances, their specific meaning emerges from how they function in your psychological system. A rose might universally suggest beauty and love, but your personal experiences with roses, positive or negative, will influence its meaning in your dreams. The multi-layered nature of symbols means that a single dream image can operate on multiple levels simultaneously: personal, cultural, and archetypal. A dream of flying might represent personal freedom from constraints, cultural myths about transcending human limitations, and the archetypal human aspiration towards spiritual elevation, all at once. Learning to think symbolically, to see beyond the literal to the patterns of meaning beneath, is a skill that enhances not just dream interpretation, but your entire relationship with life. You begin to recognize how physical symptoms, relationship patterns, and creative inspirations all express symbolic realities beyond their surface appearance. As you develop this symbolic awareness, your dreams become increasingly meaningful and useful. The unconscious responds to your interest by producing dreams with greater clarity and relevance. It's as if your deeper mind says, "Finally, someone is listening," and becomes more articulate in response. I'm curious, have you noticed any recurring symbols in your dreams? Perhaps a particular landscape, object, or situation that appears repeatedly? These recurring symbols often point to core themes in your psychological development. Share your experience in the comments. I'd love to hear what symbols your unconscious has been presenting to you. Section 6. Jung versus Freud. Two approaches to the unconscious. The divergence between Jung and Freud represents one of the most consequential intellectual splits in psychological history, and understanding their differences illuminates why Jung's approach to dreams and the unconscious offers such unique value. Both men recognized the profound importance of the unconscious mind, but they conceived of it in fundamentally different ways that led to radically different approaches to dreams, symbols, and psychological development. Sigmund Freud, Jung's mentor and original collaborator, saw the unconscious primarily as a repository for repressed thoughts, memories, and desires, especially those of a sexual nature. For Freud, unconscious content was largely material that had been banished from consciousness because it conflicted with social norms or the ego's self-image. This view led Freud to interpret dreams as disguised wish fulfillments. He believed dreams expressed forbidden desires in coded form to slip past the psychic censor. Freudian dream interpretation thus focused on decoding this disguise to reveal the repressed wishes beneath, typically sexual or aggressive impulses from early childhood. Jung initially accepted Freud's views, but as he continued his clinical work and self-exploration, he found this model increasingly inadequate. The unconscious material he encountered in his patients' dreams, and his own, contained far more than repressed wishes. It included creative potentials, spiritual insights, and collective wisdom that had never been conscious to begin with. This discovery led Jung to a more expansive view of the unconscious. Rather than merely containing what consciousness rejects, Jung saw the unconscious as a vast creative matrix that actively generates new content to complement and complete conscious perspectives. For Jung, the unconscious wasn't just a basement filled with unwanted material, but a living wellspring of creativity, wisdom, and growth potential. This fundamental difference shaped their contrasting approaches to dreams. While Freud saw dreams as disguising meaning, Jung saw them as revealing it as clearly as possible given the limitations of symbolic expression. Dreams don't conceal their true meaning. They express it in the only way possible, through symbols that convey complex realities words cannot capture. Jung's approach to dream interpretation was consequently quite different. Rather than seeking a hidden meaning behind the dream's manifest content, he took the dream imagery at face value while exploring its symbolic dimensions. The dream didn't need to be decoded. It needed to be understood on its own terms as a symbolic communication. Another crucial difference involved their concept of libido. Freud defined libido specifically as sexual energy, while Jung saw it as general psychic energy that could be expressed in many forms: creative, spiritual, intellectual, as well as sexual. This broader conception allowed Jung to recognize the variety of motivations driving human behavior beyond sexual impulses. This theoretical divergence culminated during their trip to America in 1909. During a conversation about psychic phenomena, Freud dismissed Jung's interest in these matters and refused to share his own associations to certain dreams, telling Jung, "I cannot risk my authority." For Jung, this revealed their irreconcilable differences. Freud's need to maintain a fixed theoretical position versus Jung's empirical approach to exploring the psyche wherever evidence led. Perhaps the most profound difference between them concerned the prospective function of the psyche. Freud's approach was primarily retrospective, tracing psychological symptoms back to their origins in childhood development. Jung recognized this retrospective aspect, but also emphasized the prospective function, how the psyche orients toward future development, growth, and the realization of potential. This perspective view transformed Jung's understanding of dreams. He saw dreams not just as echoes of the past, but as guidance for future psychological development, messages about where your growth is leading and what aspects of yourself need integration for further progress. The implications of these differences extend far beyond academic debate. They fundamentally alter how we approach not just dream interpretation, but the entire question of psychological health and development. In Freud's model, psychological health means successfully adapting to social reality by managing unconscious impulses. In Jung's model, it means integrating conscious and unconscious aspects of the personality into a larger, more complete whole, what he called individuation. Let me share a personal example that illustrates these different approaches. I once had a recurring dream of being in a house and discovering a door leading to unexplored rooms. A Freudian interpretation might see this as representing repressed memories or desires, perhaps things from childhood I had closed off. But from a Jungian perspective, these new rooms symbolized aspects of my potential yet to be developed, parts of myself I hadn't yet recognized or integrated. The dream wasn't just pointing backward to what I had repressed, it was pointing forward to what I could become. This perspective dimension of Jung's approach offers something profoundly hopeful. Your dreams aren't just showing you what went wrong in the past, they're guiding you toward greater wholeness in the future. They contain not just problems but solutions, not just wounds but the means of healing. As we continue exploring Jung's approach to dreams and the unconscious, keep this fundamental perspective in mind. The unconscious isn't something to merely manage or tame. It's a vital resource for growth, creativity, and self-realization. Your dreams aren't puzzles to be decoded, but messages to be received from the deepest wisdom of your psyche. Section 7. Types of dreams and their significance. Not all dreams are created equal, just as conversations vary in significance. From casual small talk to life-changing dialogues, dreams range from routine psychological maintenance to profound communications that can alter the course of your life. Jung identified several types of dreams, each serving different functions in the psyche. Let's explore these different dream types and their unique significance for your psychological journey. First are what Jung called little dreams, or everyday dreams. These routine dreams process the day's experiences, work through emotional residue, and maintain psychological equilibrium. They typically deal with personal concerns, recent events, and ongoing situations in your life. Little dreams often have a compensatory function, balancing conscious attitudes by presenting neglected perspectives. If you've been overly intellectual during your waking hours, these dreams might immerse you in emotional scenarios. If you've been ignoring a problem, they might force you to confront it symbolically. While less dramatic than other dream types, little dreams provide valuable insights into your current psychological state and immediate developmental needs. They're like regular check-ins from your unconscious, offering course corrections and addressing imbalances before they become problematic. Second are big dreams, profound, numinous experiences that can remain vivid for years or even a lifetime. These dreams often emerge during major life transitions, psychological crises, or periods of intensive growth. They frequently contain archetypal imagery from the collective unconscious and carry a sense of significance that transcends personal concerns. Big dreams can be transformative, restructuring your understanding of yourself and your life path. They often appear at crucial junctures, offering guidance when you're at a crossroads or initiating a new phase of psychological development. Jung noted that big dreams frequently occur in childhood, during midlife transitions, and near the end of life, periods when the psyche is undergoing significant restructuring. A classic example of a big dream comes from Jung's own life. During a period of intense psychological crisis after his break with Freud, Jung dreamed he was with an unknown, shadowy companion, descending into a cave where he discovered two ancient human skulls. This powerful dream helped him recognize the ancient collective dimensions of the human psyche that existed beyond personal experience, a crucial insight that shaped his subsequent theoretical work. Third are recurring dreams, dreams that repeat the same or similar scenarios over time. These persistent dreams indicate unresolved psychological issues demanding attention. The unconscious, finding its message ignored, sends it again and again until you finally integrate its meaning. Recurring dreams typically diminish in frequency or transform once you address the underlying psychological need they represent. I've worked with many people who found that once they understood and acted on the message of a recurring dream, it either stopped altogether or evolved into a new form reflecting their psychological progress. Fourth are nightmares, intensely disturbing dreams that generate fear, anxiety, or other negative emotions. Rather than being merely unpleasant experiences to endure, Jung saw nightmares as urgent communications from the unconscious about issues too important to ignore. Nightmares often appear when you're avoiding significant truths or developmental tasks. The negative emotional charge serves to grab your attention and break through resistance. From a Jungian perspective, nightmares aren't your enemy, but a forceful ally, albeit an uncomfortable one, pushing you toward necessary psychological work. Fifth are what Jung called initial dreams, the first dreams a person reports during therapy. Jung paid special attention to these dreams, believing they often contain a perspective view of the entire therapeutic process, identifying core issues and even suggesting potential outcomes. These initial dreams frequently present the big picture of what needs addressing in a person's psychological development. Sixth are lucid dreams, dreams in which you become aware that you're dreaming while remaining in the dream state. Jung recognized these as opportunities for conscious dialogue with unconscious content. In lucid dreaming, you can actively engage with dream figures, ask questions, and experiment with different responses to dream scenarios, creating a unique bridge between conscious and unconscious processes. Seventh are synchronistic dreams, dreams that coincide meaningfully with external events in ways that cannot be explained by causal connection. Jung recounted numerous examples of dreams that accurately portrayed events the dreamer could not possibly have known about through normal perception. These dreams suggest connections between psyche and world that transcend conventional understanding of space, time, and causality. The most important question to ask about any dream is not what type it is, but what meaning it holds for your unique situation. Every dream, regardless of category, represents an honest communication from your unconscious designed to support your psychological health and development. Remember that life-changing question I mentioned earlier? Here it is. What emotion did this dream evoke? The emotional tone of a dream often reveals its significance and purpose more clearly than the specific imagery. A dream that generates powerful emotion, whether fear, joy, sadness, or wonder, is typically addressing something crucial to your psychological development. As you begin working more consciously with your dreams, you may notice them becoming more vivid, memorable, and meaningful. This is a natural response to your attention. The unconscious communicates more clearly when it finds a receptive audience. Like any relationship, your connection with your unconscious deepens through consistent attention and respectful engagement. I encourage you to pay attention to the full spectrum of your dreams, from the seemingly mundane to the profoundly numinous. Each offers a unique window into your psychological process and an opportunity to integrate conscious and unconscious aspects of your personality. Section 8. Jung's approach to dream analysis. Having explored the nature of dreams and their symbolic language, let's now turn to Jung's practical method for interpreting these nightly messages from the unconscious. His approach differs markedly from other schools of dream interpretation and offers unique insights into the meaning and purpose of your dreams. Jung's method begins with several fundamental principles that guide the interpretive process. First, he approached dreams as factual statements from the unconscious, not as disguises or deceptions, but as clear communications expressing exactly what the unconscious needs to convey. In Jung's words, dreams do not deceive, they do not lie, they do not distort or disguise. They are what they are, and they say what they mean. Second, Jung emphasized the importance of context. A dream can only be properly understood within the specific life situation of the dreamer. The same symbolic image might mean something entirely different for two people based on their unique circumstances and psychological needs. Third, Jung recognized the dreamer's associations as the primary gateway to meaning. Your personal connections to dream images, what they evoke and suggest to you, provide essential clues to their significance in your psychological system. Fourth, Jung viewed dreams as compensatory to conscious attitudes. Dreams typically present perspectives, feelings, or insights that balance what is one-sided or missing in your conscious outlook. This principle provides a crucial orientation to interpretation. What is your dream complementing or counterbalancing in your waking perspective? Fifth, Jung emphasized the prospective function of dreams, their orientation toward future psychological development, rather than merely reflecting past issues. Your dreams don't just tell you where you've been, they provide guidance for where your growth is leading. With these principles in mind, Jung developed a systematic approach to dream analysis that includes several key steps. Step 1 involves gathering the complete dream narrative. Jung emphasized recording the dream immediately upon waking, capturing as many details as possible before they kunzen si, tansenji hanchani insi yi pararausai, including colors, emotions, sensations, and your reaction within the dream. Each element matters, as the unconscious doesn't waste imagery. Step 2 is establishing the dream's context in your life. What's happening in your outer life? What's your psychological state? What issues are you grappling with? What conscious attitudes might need balancing? This context provides essential background for understanding why this particular dream has emerged now. Step 3 involves gathering your personal associations to key elements of the dream. For each significant image or character, ask yourself, what does this remind me of? What feelings or memories does it evoke? What qualities or characteristics does it embody? Your spontaneous associations reveal connections between dream symbols and your psychological reality. Step 4 is what Jung called amplification, enriching understanding of dream symbols by exploring their collective and cultural dimensions. How does this symbol appear in mythology, religion, or art across cultures? What universal human experiences does it connect to? This step links personal meaning to broader archetypal patterns. Step 5 involves identifying the dream's compensatory function. How does this dream balance or complement your conscious attitude? What perspective is it adding that's missing from your waking viewpoint? What one-sidedness might it be correcting? Step 6 is considering the dream in the context of your ongoing dream series. Individual dreams are like single frames in a film. They gain meaning from the sequence they're part of. Jung found that dreams often form sequences addressing different aspects of the same psychological issue or tracking developmental processes over time. Step 7, perhaps most importantly, focuses on integration, identifying how the dream's message can be applied practically in your life. Dream interpretation isn't complete until it leads to some form of conscious integration, a new insight, attitude adjustment, or concrete action that incorporates the unconscious perspective. The biggest mistake most people make with dream interpretation is looking for universal meanings rather than personal significance. Dream dictionaries that assign fixed meanings to symbols fundamentally misunderstand how dreams function. While certain symbols have collective resonances, their specific meaning emerges from how they function in your unique psychological system. Another common pitfall is intellectualizing rather than truly engaging with dreams. Jung emphasized that genuine understanding comes not just through analysis, but through living relationship with dream content. Sometimes this means expressing the dream through nonverbal means, drawing, movement, or even dialogue with dream figures to access meanings beyond conceptual thought. Perhaps the most challenging aspect of dream interpretation is maintaining the tension between subjective and objective perspectives. On one hand, dreams are profoundly personal communications addressed specifically to you. On the other hand, they emerge from layers of the psyche that transcend personal identity and tap into collective human experience. Jung's method navigates this tension by constantly moving between personal associations and archetypal amplifications, between the unique circumstances of your life and the universal patterns of human psychological development. This dual perspective allows dream interpretation to be simultaneously deeply personal and broadly meaningful. If you've ever felt confused by the process of dream interpretation, you're not alone. Jung himself described it as both an art and a science, requiring both intuitive understanding and systematic analysis. Like learning any language, interpreting the symbolic language of dreams takes practice and patience. But unlike learning a foreign language where rules remain fixed, the language of your dreams evolves as your relationship with your unconscious develops. Dreams respond to your attention, often becoming clearer and more directly meaningful as you demonstrate willingness to engage with their messages. Remember that while Jung's method provides useful structure, dream interpretation ultimately requires openness to the unexpected, the paradoxical, and the transformative. Your unconscious often communicates precisely what your conscious mind is least prepared to recognize. which is why dreams can be simultaneously obvious in hindsight, yet surprisingly elusive in the moment. As you practice working with your dreams using Jung's approach, you'll gradually develop not just technical skill but a living relationship with your unconscious, a dialogue that enriches your life with deeper wisdom, creativity, and authenticity. Section 9. The Amplification Method. One of Jung's most innovative contributions to dream interpretation was the method of amplification, a process that deepens understanding of dream symbols by connecting them to universal patterns in mythology, religion, and cultural symbolism. This approach enriches personal dream images by revealing their connections to the collective dimensions of human experience. Amplification differs significantly from Freud's method of free association, which tends to move away from the dream image through chains of personal associations. Instead, amplification stays focused on the dream image itself, while expanding its meaning through cultural and archetypal parallels. To understand amplification, think of dream symbols as existing within concentric circles of meaning. The innermost circle contains your personal associations, what this symbol means specifically to you based on your experiences. The next circle includes cultural associations, meanings shared within your cultural context. The outermost circle encompasses archetypal patterns, universal meanings that transcend cultural boundaries. Let me demonstrate the amplification method with a common dream symbol, a snake. If you dreamed of a snake, the process would work like this. Step 1 would gather your personal associations. Perhaps snakes frighten you due to a childhood encounter, or maybe you find them fascinating and have positive associations. You might associate them with particular places, experiences, or people in your life. These personal connections form the foundation of meaning. Step 2 would explore the symbol's significance in your cultural context. In Western culture, snakes often carry associations from the biblical serpent in Eden, temptation, forbidden knowledge, deception. These cultural layers may influence your dream even if you don't consciously hold these associations. Step 3 would examine the snake as a universal archetypal symbol across cultures and throughout history. Snakes appear in virtually all mythological systems with remarkable consistency of meaning. In ancient Greece, the snake was associated with healing through the rod of Asclepius. In Hindu traditions, Kundalini energy is depicted as a coiled serpent at the base of the spine. In Mesoamerican mythology, Quetzalcoatl appears as a feathered serpent representing wisdom. In ancient Egypt, the pharaoh wore the uraeus serpent on his crown as a symbol of divine authority. These cross-cultural patterns reveal the snake as an archetypal symbol connected to transformation, healing, wisdom, life energy, and the cyclical nature of existence, through shedding its skin. The consistency of these associations across independent cultural traditions suggests they emerge from shared psychological structures in the collective unconscious. The amplification process does not replace personal associations, but enriches them by revealing how your individual experience connects to universal human patterns. Your specific snake dream gains depth when understood not just through personal history, but as a contemporary expression of ancient psychological patterns. Jung discovered that amplification was particularly valuable for dreams containing archetypal material, imagery that feels numinous, powerful, or larger than personal experience. When a dream presents symbols that seem to transcend your individual life, exploring their collective dimensions often reveals their deeper significance. Amplification also helps prevent excessive subjectivity in interpretation. By connecting personal dream images to established patterns of symbolic meaning, you gain perspective beyond purely individual associations that might be distorted by personal biases or blind spots. The method works especially well with mythological motifs that appear in dreams. If you dream of a labyrinth, understanding its significance in Greek mythology, particularly the story of Theseus, the Minotaur, and Ariadne's thread, might illuminate your dream's meaning. The labyrinth as a symbol of complex inner journeys, confrontation with the shadow, and the need for guidance appears consistently across cultures. Similarly, if you dream of climbing a mountain, amplification might connect this image to the symbolic significance of mountains across traditions as places of revelation, transformation, and connection between earth and sky. From Moses receiving the commandments on Mount Sinai to the Buddha's enlightenment experiences in the mountains, this imagery carries consistent psychological significance. Jung was particularly interested in how ancient alchemical symbolism amplified psychological processes. He discovered remarkable parallels between alchemical operations like calcination, dissolution, and coagulation, and stages of psychological transformation. The alchemical goal of turning lead into gold provided a rich metaphor for the process of psychological integration he called individuation. Importantly, amplification isn't about replacing personal meaning with collective interpretations. The universal dimensions don't negate the personal significance but provide a larger context that enriches it. Your dream of water might have specific personal associations while simultaneously connecting to the universal symbolic meaning of water as the unconscious. As you work with the amplification method, you'll likely notice interesting synchronicities between your personal symbolic system and universal patterns. These connections can be profoundly affirming, suggesting that your individual psychological journey participates in timeless human experiences. Amplification also helps explain why certain dream images feel so powerful, despite seeming unrelated to your daily concerns. When a dream taps into archetypal patterns, it carries an emotional charge and significance that transcends personal history. What Jung called numinosity, a quality of emotional power and fascination. Most importantly, amplification creates a bridge between personal and collective dimensions of your psyche. It helps you recognize how your apparently individual experiences connect to universal human patterns, reducing isolation and placing personal struggles within a larger, meaningful context. As you practice amplification with your own dreams, you'll gradually develop a richer symbolic vocabulary. You'll begin recognizing archetypal patterns in both your inner and outer life, perceiving connections between your personal journey and the great mythic themes that have guided human development throughout history. Section 10. Case Study. The House Dream. To demonstrate Jung's approach to dream interpretation in action, let's analyze a common dream scenario, what I call the house dream. This dream type appears frequently in clinical practice and illustrates many key principles of Jungian dream analysis. Here's the dream. I discover a door in my house that I never noticed before. Opening it, I find additional rooms I didn't know existed. Some rooms are dusty and abandoned, filled with old furniture and forgotten objects. Others are surprisingly spacious and beautiful. I feel both excited and slightly anxious exploring these unknown parts of my house. Now, let's apply Jung's method to understand this dream. Step 1 begins with context. This dream typically appears during periods of psychological expansion, when you're discovering new aspects of yourself or developing previously neglected capacities. It often emerges during therapy, creative pursuits, or life transitions that prompt greater self-awareness. Step 2 explores personal associations. For the dreamer, their actual house might represent security, family history, or perhaps limitation. Their feelings about their current living situation would be relevant. The dreamer's associations to the specific qualities of the unknown rooms provide crucial clues. Are they attracted to their elegance, disturbed by their neglect, curious about their contents? Step 3 applies amplification. The house as a symbol appears consistently across cultures as a representation of the self, the structure of the psyche. Different rooms typically symbolize different aspects of personality or areas of life. Basements often represent the personal unconscious. Attics might suggest spiritual dimensions or higher aspirations, and hidden rooms frequently symbolize unknown potentials or neglected aspects of the self. Literature and mythology offer numerous examples of this symbolism. In Bluebeard, the forbidden room contains dangerous secrets. In The Secret Garden, the hidden key unlocks access to new life and healing. These cultural patterns enrich our understanding of the house as a symbol of the self with its known and unknown chambers. Step 4 identifies the dream's compensatory function. This dream typically compensates for a conscious attitude that is too limited or restrictive. The dreamer may have been identifying too strongly with certain aspects of themselves while neglecting others. The dream reveals that their psychological house is larger and more diverse than they've recognized. Step 5 considers the dream's place in a developmental sequence. This dream often marks the beginning of a significant expansion of self-awareness. It might be followed by dreams that explore specific contents of the newly discovered rooms, or that involve renovating neglected spaces, reflecting the integration of previously unconscious material. Step 6 focuses on the emotional tone of the dream. The mixed feelings of excitement and anxiety are significant, suggesting both attraction to these new possibilities and some trepidation about incorporating them. These emotions often reflect the dreamer's attitude toward psychological growth, desiring expansion while feeling uncertain about changing established patterns. Step 7 addresses practical integration. Working with this dream might involve asking, what aspects of myself have I been unaware of or neglecting? What potentials within me remain undeveloped? What emotions or memories have I closed the door on that might now need attention? Concrete steps toward integration might include exploring new interests or activities that feel intuitively connected to the new rooms, journaling about qualities or capabilities you've undervalued in yourself, creative expression of the dream through art, allowing further unconscious material to emerge, active imagination dialogues with figures encountered in the unknown rooms. Let me share how this worked with an actual client, with identifying details changed. Sarah, a 42-year-old executive, reported this dream during a period when she felt increasingly restricted by her career identity. She had been highly successful but felt something important was missing from her life. Her personal associations revealed that she saw her current life as carefully constructed but somewhat sterile, like the public rooms of her dream house. The dusty rooms contained objects from her childhood, art supplies, books of poetry, musical instruments, representing creative pursuits she had abandoned for her professional career. Through amplification, we connected her dream to the archetypal pattern of the neglected feminine, creative, intuitive qualities sacrificed for success in a male-dominated corporate world. Sarah recognized how she had constructed a persona that excluded vital aspects of herself to succeed professionally. The compensatory function of the dream was clear. It showed her that she hadn't lost these creative aspects of herself. She had merely closed the door on them. They remained available, waiting to be rediscovered and integrated into her life. Sarah's work with this dream led to significant life changes. She began setting boundaries around her work hours to make time for creative pursuits. She took up painting again after a 20-year hiatus. Eventually, she restructured her career to incorporate more creativity and personal expression. A year later, Sarah reported a follow-up dream. She was renovating the previously dusty rooms, bringing in light and new furniture while preserving cherished objects from the past. This dream reflected her progress in integrating these rediscovered aspects of herself into her conscious identity. This case illustrates several important principles of Jungian dream interpretation. First, the dream wasn't just reflecting past issues, but providing guidance for future development, showing Sarah not just what she had lost, but how she could reclaim it. Second, the symbolic imagery, the house with unknown rooms, connected Sarah's personal situation to a universal human experience, the discovery of greater wholeness through integrating neglected aspects of the self. Third, the dream's emotional tone, mixture of excitement and anxiety, accurately reflected Sarah's conflicted feelings about changing her established identity. Fourth, the follow-up dream demonstrated how the unconscious tracks psychological development, providing updated imagery that reflects progress and suggests next steps. As you follow along with this analysis, you might start to understand how to apply similar principles to your own dreams. The house dream is particularly common because it so perfectly symbolizes the relationship between conscious identity, the known rooms, and unconscious potentials, the undiscovered spaces. Have you ever experienced a dream similar to this? Perhaps discovering new rooms, a hidden passage, or an unexplored part of a familiar building? If so, consider what aspects of yourself might have been seeking acknowledgement and integration through this symbolic imagery. Your dream house, like Sarah's, might contain valuable treasures waiting to be reclaimed. Section 11. Practical methods for remembering dreams. Even the most profound dream offers no benefit if you can't remember it. Fortunately, dream recall is a skill that can be developed with the right practices. Let me share some practical methods for improving your ability to remember and work with your dreams. First, and most importantly, set a clear intention before sleep. Your unconscious responds to conscious interest and attention. Before falling asleep, spend a few moments affirming your desire to remember your dreams. This simple practice often produces immediate improvements in recall. As Jung observed, the unconscious cooperates when consciousness demonstrates genuine interest. Second, keep a dream journal by your bedside. The physical act of preparing to record dreams signals your commitment to the unconscious. Your journal can be as simple as a notebook or as elaborate as a specially designated book with space for both writing and drawing. Some people find that keeping a voice recorder handy allows for capturing dreams when writing feels too effortful. Third, remain still upon awakening. Dream memories are fragile, especially in the first moments of wakefulness. When you wake up, try to maintain the same position for a few moments before moving. Physical movement can disrupt the delicate process of transferring dream content from short-term to long-term memory. Fourth, record dreams immediately. Don't check your phone. Don't plan your day. Don't engage in conversation. First, write down whatever you remember of your dreams, even if it's just fragments or emotional impressions. Each minute that passes after waking increases the likelihood of forgetting dream content. Fifth, start with whatever you remember, no matter how small. Perhaps you recall only a color, a feeling, or a single image. Begin with that fragment and see if more details emerge as you focus on it. One remembered element often leads to others, like pulling a thread that gradually unravels more of the dream tapestry. Sixth, record the dream in present tense. Writing, "I am walking through a forest" rather than "I was walking through a forest" helps maintain the immediacy of the dream experience and often improves recall of additional details. Seventh, include all sensory impressions and emotions. Note colors, sounds, smells, textures, and especially the emotional tone of the dream. These elements often carry crucial information about the dream's significance and can help trigger recall of additional content. Eighth, sketch visual elements even if you aren't artistically inclined. Simple drawings of dream images can capture aspects that words might miss and often help preserve the dream's emotional impact. Don't worry about artistic quality. The purpose is recording, not creating fine art. Ninth, title your dreams. Creating a title helps crystallize the dream's essential quality and makes it easier to reference later when looking for patterns. A title like The Unknown Rooms or The Pursuing Shadow captures something of the dream's core meaning. 10th, practice consistency. Dream recall improves dramatically with regular attention. Set aside time each morning for recording and reflecting on dreams. This consistent practice establishes a rhythm that the unconscious responds to by producing more memorable dreams. If you struggle with dream recall despite these practices, try these additional approaches. Set an alarm for approximately 6 hours after falling asleep, when you're likely to be in or near a REM cycle. After recording any dreams, return to sleep. This interrupted sleep technique often enhances recall. Before bed, tell yourself specifically when you'll remember your dreams. "I'll remember my dreams when I wake up at 7 a.m. This creates a time-specific intention that can improve recall. Reduce alcohol and certain medications if possible, as these can suppress REM sleep or impair the memory consolidation necessary for dream recall. Pay attention to hypnagogic and hypnopompic imagery, the dreamlike impressions that occur as you're falling asleep or waking up. While not true dreams, these images can help strengthen your connection to unconscious imagery. Practice reality testing during the day by regularly asking yourself, "Am I dreaming?" This habit can increase dream lucidity and general dream awareness, which often improves recall. As your dream recall improves, you'll likely notice interesting patterns emerging. Certain symbols, situations, or emotions may recur. Particular dream locations might appear repeatedly. Tracking these patterns reveals the specific dialect of symbolic language your unconscious uses to communicate with you. One powerful practice for deepening your relationship with dreams is keeping a dream synopsis, a separate section in your journal where you record brief summaries of each dream with its date and title. This overview helps you identify patterns and connections between dreams that might not be apparent when considering each dream in isolation. Remember that dream recall has natural fluctuations. Even people with excellent dream memory experience periods when recall diminishes. These cycles often correspond to shifts in psychological development or life circumstances. Rather than becoming discouraged during low recall periods, maintain your practice while trusting the process. Finally, approach dream recall with genuine curiosity rather than obligation. The unconscious responds most generously to authentic interest. Think of dream recall not as a task to accomplish, but as developing a relationship with a part of yourself that communicates in images rather than words, a relationship that deepens through attentive listening. As you begin applying these methods tonight, imagine what insights might be waiting to emerge from your dreams. The simple act of paying attention often unleashes a flood of dream material that has been waiting for acknowledgement. Your unconscious has been speaking all along. Now you're learning to listen. Section 12. Active imagination. Approaching the unconscious while awake. While dreams provide one pathway to the unconscious, Jung developed another method for consciously engaging with unconscious content while awake, a technique he called active imagination. This powerful approach allows direct dialogue with unconscious material through a wakeful, meditative state that combines focused attention with spontaneous imagery. Jung discovered this method during his own psychological crisis between 1913 and 1916, after his break with Freud left him profoundly disoriented. Finding himself confronted with disturbing visions and emotions, he developed a disciplined practice of engaging with this material rather than dismissing or being overwhelmed by it. This confrontation with the unconscious not only facilitated his personal healing, but laid the groundwork for much of his later theoretical work. The essence of active imagination involves establishing a conscious dialogue with unconscious content, allowing it to unfold autonomously while maintaining awareness. Unlike passive fantasy or directed visualization, this method requires both receptivity to unconscious material and active participation in engaging with it. The basic process involves several distinct phases. Step 1 begins with quieting the conscious mind through meditation or focused attention. You might focus on your breath, progressively relax your body, or use a mantra to create a receptive mental state, alert, but not actively directing thought. Step 2 involves identifying a starting point, an image, emotion, or situation that carries psychological energy. This might come from a dream fragment, a persistent mood, a bodily sensation with emotional significance, or a compelling fantasy image. The key is choosing something that feels energetically charged rather than intellectually interesting. Step 3 requires allowing the initial image or situation to develop autonomously. This is the most challenging aspect for many people. Rather than directing the imagery as in visualization, you observe what happens as if watching a film unfold, while remaining actively engaged with the process. The unconscious is permitted to express itself with minimal interference from conscious direction. Step 4 involves active engagement with the figures or situations that emerge. Rather than passively observing, you enter into dialogue with the imagery, asking questions, expressing reactions, and interacting with figures that appear. This creates a genuine exchange between conscious and unconscious perspectives. Step 5 focuses on documentation, recording the experience through writing, drawing, movement, or other expressive forms. This documentation serves both to concretize the experience and to facilitate later reflection and integration. The final step, integration, involves reflecting on the experience and identifying how its insights might be applied practically in your life. Without this step, active imagination remains an interesting psychological exercise rather than a transformative practice. Let me offer a simple example of how this might work. Imagine you've been experiencing unexplained anxiety. During meditation, you notice this anxiety manifests as a tightness in your chest. Focusing on this sensation, you ask what image might represent it. Perhaps a tangled knot of wires appears in your mind's eye. Instead of analyzing this image intellectually, you allow it to develop. The tangled wires might begin moving, or changing color, or transforming into something else entirely. You remain attentive to these changes without directing them. If a figure emerges, perhaps a person who created the tangle, or someone offering to help untangle it, you engage in dialogue. Who are you? Why are these wires tangled? What needs to happen here? You listen for responses that arise spontaneously, rather than composing answers. Throughout, you maintain a balanced state between conscious awareness and unconscious flow, neither losing yourself in the fantasy nor controlling it. This paradoxical middle position creates the alchemical vessel in which psychological transformation occurs. Afterward, you record the experience, noting both the content of the imagery and your emotional reactions. You reflect on possible meanings and consider how the insights gained might inform your approach to the anxiety that initiated the process. Active imagination differs from similar practices in several important ways. Unlike guided visualization, it doesn't follow a predetermined path, but allows the unconscious to lead. Unlike passive fantasy, it maintains conscious engagement throughout rather than drifting into reverie. Unlike meditation focused on emptiness or presence, it actively works with psychological content. Unlike artistic creation that expresses conscious intentions, it prioritizes receiving unconscious material. The power of active imagination lies in creating a dialogue between conscious and unconscious parts of the psyche. This dialogue gradually reduces the opposition between these aspects of yourself, allowing greater integration and access to the resources of the unconscious without being overwhelmed by them. Jung employed this method extensively in his work with patients, particularly those for whom dream analysis alone proved insufficient. He found it especially valuable for people experiencing psychological impasses, creative blocks, or existential questions that rational approaches couldn't resolve. The method is adaptable to various temperaments and interests. Those with visual inclinations might work primarily with mental imagery. Those musically oriented might allow unconscious content to express itself through sound or composition. Those with kinesthetic tendencies might engage through movement or dance. The essential element isn't the specific medium, but the quality of attention that balances conscious awareness with unconscious flow. Safety considerations are important when practicing active imagination. Jung emphasized that this method involves genuine engagement with powerful psychological forces and shouldn't be approached casually. For people with fragile psychological boundaries or a history of dissociative experiences, working with a qualified therapist is advisable when exploring this approach. For most people, however, active imagination provides a safe and valuable method for expanding dialogue with the unconscious. It complements dream work by offering a way to continue engaging with unconscious content during waking hours and to actively participate in the process rather than only receiving communications through dreams. Perhaps most importantly, active imagination cultivates a different relationship with unconscious parts of yourself, moving from fear, dismissal, or passive reception to active engagement, curiosity, and dialogue. This relational shift itself is transformative, reducing psychological splitting and creating greater internal collaboration. As you begin exploring active imagination, approach it with both seriousness and playfulness, respecting the power of unconscious content while remaining open to surprise, creativity, and even humor in the process. The unconscious responds most generously when approached with genuine interest rather than either dismissive skepticism or uncritical acceptance. In time, this practice can develop into a reliable method for accessing inner wisdom, resolving psychological conflicts, stimulating creativity, and deepening self-understanding. As Jung discovered during his own crisis, the unconscious contains not just problems, but solutions, not just wounds, but healing, if we learn to engage with it as a partner rather than an opponent or a mystery. Section 13. Synchronicity. When inner and outer worlds align. Jung's exploration of the unconscious led him to one of his most provocative concepts, synchronicity, or meaningful coincidence. This phenomenon represents moments when your inner psychological state aligns with external events in ways that cannot be explained by conventional causality, but carry profound personal meaning. Unlike the predictable relationship between cause and effect, synchronicity involves a causal connections, events linked by meaning rather than mechanical causation. Jung defined synchronicity as a coincidence in time of two or more causally unrelated events, which have the same or similar meaning. The classic example from Jung's practice involved a patient who was describing a dream about a golden scarab beetle. During their session, Jung heard a tapping at his window. Opening it, he found a rose chafer beetle, remarkably similar to a scarab, trying to enter the room, an extraordinarily rare occurrence in that climate. This meaningful coincidence broke through the patient's excessive rationalism, facilitating a breakthrough in her therapy. What distinguishes synchronicity from mere coincidence is meaning. Random coincidences happen frequently by statistical probability. Synchronistic events, by contrast, carry significant personal meaning that feels numinous or emotionally charged. They create a sense of the world momentarily responding to or reflecting your inner state in a personally tailored way. Jung proposed that synchronicities reveal a deeper reality where psyche and matter aren't entirely separate, where the inner and outer worlds can reflect each other through connections that transcend conventional understanding of space, time, and causality. This concept resonates with findings in quantum physics, suggesting that at fundamental levels, the observer cannot be separated from the observed. Synchronicities typically occur at significant junctures in life, during major transitions, psychological breakthroughs, creative processes, or spiritual awakenings. They often appear when rational approaches have reached their limits, offering guidance from beyond logical processes. I have witnessed countless examples of synchronicity in both my personal life and work with others. People frequently report finding exactly the book they need falling unexpectedly from a shelf, encountering a person with precisely the information they've been seeking, or experiencing external events that perfectly mirror their inner psychological process. One client was contemplating leaving her career to pursue her passion for marine biology, something she'd abandoned decades earlier. While walking on a beach during this period of deliberation, she found a perfectly preserved starfish, the exact species she had studied in her undergraduate research. This meaningful coincidence confirmed her inner direction in a way no logical process could have accomplished. Another person, struggling with whether to end a relationship, randomly opened a book in a waiting room to find a passage that perfectly described his situation and provided the clarity he had been seeking. The statistical improbability of finding exactly that passage in exactly that moment gave the experience a numinous quality that transcended rational explanation. Synchronicities share several common characteristics. First, they involve a correspondence between an inner state or need and an external event that meaningfully addresses it. Second, they typically cannot be explained by causal connection. There's no logical reason why the external event should align with the inner state. Third, they carry emotional significance and a quality of numinosity, a sense of something transcendent briefly becoming visible in ordinary reality. Fourth, they often provide guidance, confirmation, or new perspective at crucial decision points or developmental thresholds. Jung considered synchronicities to be manifestations of what he called the unus mundus, the unified reality underlying the apparent separation between psyche and matter. In this view, synchronicities represent moments when the deeper unity of reality becomes momentarily visible within the apparently separate realms of inner and outer experience. From a practical perspective, synchronicities offer several valuable benefits. They provide confirmation or guidance when logical processes reach their limits. They restore a sense of meaningful connection to the larger world, countering the alienation often experienced in modern life. They suggest that reality might be more responsive to human consciousness than mechanistic worldviews allow, opening new possibilities for how we understand our place in the cosmos. They often facilitate psychological integration by providing external reflections of internal processes that might otherwise remain unconscious. Cultivating awareness of synchronicity involves several practices. Pay attention to coincidences, especially those that carry emotional resonance or seem to address your current psychological concerns. Notice when external events seem to reflect or respond to your thoughts, dreams, or inner processes. Remain open to guidance from unexpected sources, particularly during times of transition or uncertainty. Document synchronistic experiences to track patterns that might reveal deeper meanings over time. Develop a balanced perspective that neither dismisses meaningful coincidences as mere randomness, nor attributes magical causation to every coincidence. Importantly, synchronicities cannot be forced or manufactured. Attempts to manipulate them typically lead to projection rather than genuine synchronistic experiences. They emerge organically when the conditions are right, often during periods of psychological openness, reduced ego control, or heightened attention to both inner and outer worlds. What's your experience with synchronicity? Have you encountered meaningful coincidences that seem to provide guidance or confirmation at important junctures in your life? Sharing these experiences often reveals how common they are, despite being frequently dismissed or overlooked in a culture dominated by materialistic explanations. As you become more attuned to the language of the unconscious through dream work and active imagination, you may notice an increase in synchronistic experiences. This often reflects growing alignment between conscious and unconscious aspects of the psyche, creating greater resonance between your inner state and the outer world. Synchronicity reminds us that meaning transcends mechanical causation, that significance and purpose might operate according to principles that complement rather than contradict causal understanding. In Jung's vision, synchronicity represents a third principle alongside space-time causality and energy conservation, a principle of a causal connection through meaning that completes our understanding of how reality functions. In practical terms, paying attention to synchronicities can enrich your life with a sense of meaningful connection to a responsive universe, one in which inner and outer realities participate in an ongoing dialogue that transcends conventional boundaries between subjective and objective experience. Section 14. Individuation, the goal of Jung's approach. All of Jung's work with dreams, symbols, and the unconscious ultimately serves one central purpose, what he called individuation, the process of becoming your whole, authentic self by integrating conscious and unconscious aspects of your personality. This is not merely a psychological technique, but a lifelong journey toward greater wholeness and meaning. Individuation represents a natural developmental process that unfolds throughout life, with particular intensity during major transitions. It's not something you create or invent, but something you participate in consciously, a natural movement toward psychological completeness that you can either facilitate or hinder. At its core, individuation involves progressively integrating previously unconscious or undeveloped aspects of yourself into a more complete personality. This doesn't mean achieving some idealized state of perfection or eliminating all psychological conflicts. Rather, it means developing a more fluid relationship between conscious and unconscious, expanding your identity to include more of your total psychological reality. The individuation process typically follows certain patterns, though the specific content and timing vary for each person. It usually begins with confronting what Jung called the shadow, aspects of yourself that have been rejected, denied, or repressed because they conflict with your conscious values or self-image. These might include qualities your family disapproved of, traits that seemed threatening or unacceptable, or capabilities that remained undeveloped due to life circumstances. Shadow integration doesn't mean acting out rejected impulses, but consciously acknowledging these aspects of yourself, understanding their legitimate needs and energies, and finding constructive expressions for them. This reduces the psychic energy expended in repression and diminishes unconscious projection of shadow material onto others. The next phase typically involves engaging with the anima, for men, or animus, for women, the contrasexual aspect of the personality that balances your conscious gender identity. A man's anima represents his inner feminine qualities, while a woman's animus embodies her masculine characteristics. These figures often appear in dreams as significant opposite-sex figures who challenge, guide, or complement the dreamer. Integrating the anima or animus means developing a relationship with qualities culturally associated with the opposite gender: emotionality and receptivity for men, assertiveness, and logical thinking for women. This integration transcends cultural gender stereotypes, allowing access to the full range of human qualities regardless of gender identity. Later stages involve encountering archetypal figures that represent different aspects of wisdom and maturity: the wise old man or woman, the divine child, the hero, and others. These encounters often coincide with midlife transitions and beyond, as psychological development turns toward questions of meaning, legacy, and spiritual values. The ultimate goal of individuation involves relationship with what Jung called the self, the archetype of wholeness and the organizing center of the total personality, both conscious and unconscious. The self isn't identical with the ego, your conscious identity, but represents the totality of the psyche, including all its polarities and potentials. The self often appears in dreams and active imagination as a highly numinous figure radiating wisdom and power, perhaps as a divine being, exceptional person, or central symbol like a mandala. Encounters with self-imagery typically carry a profound sense of meaning and often provide crucial guidance for life direction. Importantly, individuation doesn't mean achieving some final state of completion. It's an ongoing process that continues throughout life, with different aspects requiring integration at different stages. Jung emphasized that individuation isn't about becoming some abstract ideal of perfection, but becoming your unique self, the particular expression of humanity that only you can embody. Individuation also doesn't mean isolation or exaggerated independence. Paradoxically, as you become more fully yourself, you typically develop deeper, more authentic connections with others. Integrating your own shadow makes you less likely to project it onto others, while developing your inner masculine or feminine aspects improves relationships with actual men and women in your life. Dreams play an essential role in the individuation process, providing guidance, correction, and encouragement, tailored specifically to your needs at each stage of development. They reveal both where you're being one-sided and what aspects of yourself are ready for integration. They consistently point toward greater wholeness while respecting your unique developmental timing. Active imagination serves as a conscious complement to dream work, allowing deliberate engagement with unconscious content that supports individuation. Through this practice, you can actively participate in dialogue with inner figures representing aspects of yourself seeking integration. Symbolic expressions, through art, writing, movement, or other creative forms, provide another pathway for working with unconscious material. Jung found that expressing dream imagery or active imagination experiences through creative mediums often reveals additional layers of meaning and facilitates integration of unconscious content. Practical steps for supporting your individuation journey include: Step 1. Keep a dream journal by your bedside and record dreams immediately upon waking. Review your dreams regularly, noting recurring symbols, themes, and figures that might indicate aspects of yourself seeking integration. Step 2. Practice active imagination with images that carry emotional energy, allowing unconscious content to express itself while maintaining conscious engagement. Document these experiences through writing, drawing, or other expressive forms. Step 3. Pay attention to synchronicities, meaningful coincidences that may indicate alignment with unconscious processes. These often appear at significant junctures in the individuation journey, providing confirmation or guidance when rational approaches reach their limits. Step 4. Explore symbolic methods of expression through art, movement, or writing. Creating mandalas, circular designs representing wholeness, working with clay, dance, or poetry can all provide channels for unconscious material to emerge in forms that bypass rational censorship. Step 5. Notice projection patterns in your relationships. What you strongly react to in others often reflects disowned aspects of yourself. Our shadow qualities frequently appear in those who trigger intense emotional reactions, whether positive or negative. Step 6. Seek balance between thinking and feeling, sensation and intuition in your approach to life. Jung identified these psychological functions as forming two complementary pairs that require balanced development for psychological wholeness. The gifts of working with your unconscious through the individuation process are profound. You gain greater self-awareness and authenticity as you incorporate previously unconscious aspects of yourself into conscious identity. You access creative resources beyond conscious thinking, drawing on the tremendous generative power of the unconscious. You experience reduced internal conflict as shadow aspects are integrated rather than projected or repressed. You develop deeper connections with others as projections are withdrawn and relationships become based on reality rather than unconscious transference. You discover a sense of meaning and purpose aligned with your whole self, rather than limited conscious identity or social expectations. Perhaps most importantly, individuation leads to what Jung called a religious attitude, not necessarily adherence to any formal religion, but a lived relationship with something greater than the ego. As he wrote, individuation does not shut one out from the world, but gathers the world to oneself. The path of individuation isn't always comfortable. It requires facing aspects of yourself that may be challenging, frightening, or contrary to your conscious self-image. It means encountering the genuine complexity and paradox of the human psyche rather than maintaining comforting simplifications. Yet, the alternative, remaining identified solely with your conscious ego while unconscious forces work behind the scenes, ultimately creates greater suffering through psychological symptoms, projection, and a profound sense of alienation from your deeper self. As Jung himself discovered through his own confrontation with the unconscious, engaging with the full range of your psyche ultimately brings not fragmentation, but greater coherence, not diminishment, but expansion, not isolation, but deeper connection with both self and world. Your unconscious isn't something to fear or merely manage. It's the source of your greatest potential for wholeness, creativity, and authentic living. By developing a relationship with these hidden aspects of yourself, you access wisdom and energy far beyond what the conscious mind alone can provide. Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. These words from Jung capture the essence of our journey today. We've explored the structure of the mind according to Jung's revolutionary model: the conscious mind with its selective awareness, the personal unconscious with its forgotten memories and complexes, and the collective unconscious with its universal archetypal patterns. We've discovered how dreams serve as the royal road to the unconscious, providing compensatory messages precisely calibrated to balance our conscious perspective and guide our psychological development. We've examined the language of symbols through which the unconscious communicates, learning how these multidimensional images express realities that literal language cannot capture. We've explored practical methods for working with dreams and the unconscious, from Jung's approach to dream interpretation and the Amplification Method to active imagination and attention to synchronicity. And we've seen how all these elements serve the ultimate goal of individuation, becoming your whole, authentic self by integrating conscious and unconscious aspects of your personality. As you leave today, remember that the symbols and images that speak to you personally are your unique pathway to the unconscious. Trust your fascination, follow what energizes you, and remain open to the messages your deeper self is sending. The journey of individuation isn't about reaching a final destination, but embracing the continuous unfolding of who you truly are. I encourage you to begin your own conscious relationship with your unconscious tonight. Place a notebook and pen beside your bed with the intention of recording your dreams. Set a clear intention before sleep. I will remember my dreams and record them upon waking. When you wake, remain still for a few moments before recording whatever dream fragments you recall, no matter how small. Begin looking for patterns in your dream imagery over time, noticing recurring symbols, scenarios, or emotional themes. A month from now, you'll have created a personal archive of your unconscious speaking to you, a treasure trove of wisdom, creativity, and guidance from your deeper self. I'd love to hear about your experiences with this work. What symbols recur in your dreams? What insights have you gained from paying attention to your unconscious? Share in the comments below. Your experience might illuminate the path for others on this journey. Next time, we'll explore Jung's core archetypes that appear in all our dreams, especially the one that most people misinterpret completely. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss this deep dive into the shadow, the anima, animus, and the self, powerful archetypal forces that shape your life, whether you're aware of them or not. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of Jung's map to the unconscious mind. Until next time, may your dreams reveal the wisdom your conscious mind has yet to discover.